way, we can make this, put it on our YouTube channel. So that way, if you need to go back to it, you will be able to reference it. Or if you wanted to send it to some of those friends and family members that weren't able to join us today, you can go ahead and forward that information to them. But again, we're going to try to record this. So I also encourage you to take really great notes just in case that does not happen. And now I will finally get through here. So I will open the floor for Judith. And again, thank you.
Hi, I hope everyone can hear me. I'm Judith Collins, and I'm representing today the Dallas Metropolitan Small Business Development Center. So for those who don't know what SBDC does, it's essentially an agency funded by SBA. And so we are the mouthpiece of SBA, and we also are responsible for assisting businesses with business plan writing, any kind of operational needs, desires, and so forth at no cost or for taxpayers' dollars, essentially. So today, there's lots of confusion around PPPs, and PPP stands for the Paycheck Protection Program that came under the CARES Act. That became law on March 27th. It's been a challenge on many levels. One is the amount of volume of loans that's being processed. And the difference between the PPP loan and the EIDL loan, the Economic Injury Disaster Relief Loan, is that the PPP loans are being administered through the banks, which I think is great. The thing about EIDL is that, you had to go through the SBA portal to access it, and anyone in the United States, so imagine the applications through that channel. PPP loans feels more personal. With that said, we have challenges for loan how we're going to process loan volume. When they finally hit the street April 3rd, they decided that they were not processing PPP for their existing clients. And that's frustration. And this is a lot of my, travel to lenders sometimes. They have to make a loan with an ABA. And they don't really have assets, but also have lines of credit, who has a loan already with them, and even credit cards. So that's frustrating. The PPP loans are also it's for everything, and it's not for profit. So the frustration now is stemming from the smaller businesses, the sole prop or the single employee business, the one person business, as well as for nonprofits. And again, that's frustrating because a lot of these companies don't necessarily have a bank account set up with these on any banks. So again, that's the challenge, and I'll address that later. But let's start by understanding the PPP and what it looks like. So the Paycheck Protection Program, just know that just recognize it from the fact that it's the 1% interest, no collateral is required, no personal guarantee is required. The term is 2 years. And you can start repayment 1 year after you get the loan. So you can defer the loan for up to a year. I want to bring that to your attention because there are some fintech banks that have applied to SBA to administer the PPPs. And I want to make sure that when you check in with them, that you describe exactly what I just described to you. Is this the 1%? No collateral, no personal guarantee, 2 year can be deferred for 1 year loan. Make that clear because I'm not sure how many scams are out there. And there are lots of fintech folks, which are online banks, that might, look at this as the opportunity to issue some scams. So be careful. So it's any bank, so it's any business that can apply, it's any nonprofit that can apply. The process usually begins with a PPP application. So when you choose your bank, and I recommend that you reach out to your bank that you have that deposit with first. If you get rejected, then you can call me and I'll leave my email address. And usually what happens is lenders come to me and tell me that they're accepting new PPP applicants. So that doesn't happen all the time, but I've been fortunate to have 3 lenders, for example, that reached out to me and said they're accepting new PPP applicants. One out of the 3 already ran out of funds. Let's talk about running out of funds. So a lot of you too have maybe experienced a bank, i.e. Wells Fargo, that was your bank, and because you maybe have deposited or credit card, what have you. And so how do banks run out of money? So how this program works is that it's $249 billion. It's coming from the Treasury, but SBA didn't just turn around and give that money to banks. SBA asked banks to apply to participate. And the banks that choose to participate are the banks that have some amount of deposit already in their coffers. And so as they apply and get approved, and then they open up the program, if they have a large volume of it, they're going to deplete those reserves pretty soon, or those designated amount of money for the program pretty soon. So what happens is when you apply for their money and they get your application, then they have to turn in that application to SBA, and SBA will have to be okay with the documentation for them to receive their money at the tail end. So they may get their money like 2 years later, for example, once everybody's paid up. So that's what makes banks really nervous. That's why they said, look, we're just going to stick with our existing clients for now because we have some kind of paper trail on them. We also have a history and a relationship with them. And so let's do it that way. And so part of that relationship stems from really good documentation. So let's talk about documentation. For you to be eligible for forgiveness of these loans, your documentation really has to be on point. The lenders will help you, but it's hard when everyone is doing it remotely, isn't it? So the onus is really on you to understand how to really ensure that A, you get the loan if you apply for it, and B, that at the tail end of it, which is at the tail end of the 8 weeks, when you want forgiveness, that you make the effort to create an audit trail of how you used the loans. So part of that documentation is already a pre-existing form, that's the PPP form. But the onus is also on you to back up everything that you provide on the PPP form. For example, the Paycheck Protection or the PPP loan is really strictly for payroll. It's for helping you to maintain your employees, even if that employee is you. That's the whole purpose of the act. It's to ensure that people continue to get paychecks so that they can so that the employee can, go out and do whatever it is they need to do to take care of their families. So with that said, your PPP, when you present it on that form, you should also have documentation, for example. So if you're a sole prop, you may have a Schedule C that you want to include, or a 1040. If you have several employees, you want to distinguish your employees from your 1099. If you have employee with benefits, you want to lay out what those benefits are, whether they're retirement programs, whether they're leave, sick leave. You want to document it precisely, itemizedly. If you're not sure how to do that, again, my office or the SBDC, myself, can help you create a nice little spreadsheet that kind of summarizes, here is what I'm presenting to the lender, and here is how I'm supporting what I'm presenting so that I get my loan forgiven. Okay, so part of that getting your loan forgiven is understanding how to do the payroll calculation. And sure, there's been a lot of confusion on that as well, but banks have finally figured it out because the law wasn't very clear that all they have to do is institute their own calculators. So depending on the lender you choose, you can go on their website, and part of that PP form might be also a payroll calculator that you need to visit. If a bank doesn't have that, again, you can call me and I'll help you to figure that out. Okay, so in general, what they're looking for, and this is what you have to spell out both on the PPP form and in your summary, if you choose, and I encourage you to do that. What they're looking for is your average monthly payroll times 2.5, or they're really taking your average monthly and giving you 2.5 months of loan. So it kind of acts like a bridge loan. The term under which these loans are going to be issued or the crisis occurs is between February 15th and June 30th, 2020. So if you apply for these loans, it's an understanding that, hey, you're applying because COVID had an impact on your business for several reasons. It impacted in that it closed the business. That's a valid reason for applying for these. It impacted that it decreased revenues astronomically, 70%, or just nosedives off the cliff. It disrupted the supply chain that you were dealing with if you're, say, a manufacturer. It even disrupts your accounting system. Whatever it takes, or whatever it did, or whatever the impact was, you want to state that and state it in the time that it occurred. And again, between February 15th and June 30th is the time frame that's recognized for the incidents when COVID-19 takes place. Okay, so that's the PPP, and there's a PPP formula. If you are, well, let me just say this. Some of you all might be confused about what else is counted as part of the PPP forgiveness. And in addition to payroll costs, and payroll costs is your gross wages, plus tips, plus commission, and it's in other things like vacation, parental family leave, medical sick leave, allowance for dismissal or separation, any kind of healthcare benefits, retirement benefits, and state and local taxes that's assessed on your payroll. It includes everything but FICA. So Social Security is not included in that cost. You can also include your rent, your utilities, and any interest debt that you accrue. So sometimes it's debt on your mortgage debt, and that interest you can deduct. What's interesting about also the program is that 75% of that loan has to be allocated to your payroll, and another 25% is the rent, utilities, and so forth. Hold on, let me do something. I want to make sure my computer's plugged in. Okay, it's plugged in. Just love that technology. All right. Let's talk a little bit about, so that's PPP loans. So anyone, like I said, the challenges right now, it's finding the bank that's willing to help. And if you are a sole proprietor, meaning you're the only person in that business, even if you're an LLC, yes, that's the challenge. I can help with that. I have a few lenders that are accepting new folks or new clients to work with. There are selective again. The 1099s, I'll admit that for 1099s and for self-employed, it's hard when you don't have a record, a track record with anyone, for anyone to just accept you easily into the program, because what the lenders are fearful of is, 2 years from now, when the auditors start evaluating the program and its success, they want to make sure that there wasn't a lot of fraud. And so that's why we're gonna just kind of be patient with each other. The good news, I think, with the smaller businesses is that if you use QuickBooks, if you use Square, if you use PayPal even, that those lenders have been approved to also issue PPP loans. So again, they've been approved because they have a lot of access into your personal information, financial wise, about your business, and can therefore testify, verify, that this indeed, your sales were this way, and then COVID impacted it, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of those kind of fintech agencies also are allowed to, I guess you give them your account number and they can deduct accordingly. So having that kind of access allows them to get approval from SBA to administer these loans, to ensure that there's no fraud or consequence fraud. Before I kind of open up for questions, I also want to clarify the difference between a PPP loan and an EIDL loan. So an EIDL loan, what's great about it, even though it's not quite as accessible, is that if you get it, you can pay for anything else and everything else outside of payroll. PPP loans are only for payroll and for the rent, utilities, and debt on mortgage, or any kind of debt, an interest on mortgage, or any interest on debt that you have. The EIDL loan, you can pay for other things, like you can buy capital assets with it. You can just anything outside of that, marketing, anything to help your business get back on track, you can do with the EIDL loan. You can apply for your PPP loan via your bank route or via these fintech routes. If you get both PPP loans, like if you get 2 approval, you need to refuse one of them. If you get both of them, you can only use one of them. Just remember that. If you use both of them, that's fraud, and you can get arrested for that. And we don't want anybody to get unnecessarily arrested. The EIDL loan, however, if you get an EIDL loan and if you get a PP loan, you can use them. You just have to use them for different purposes. Like you can't use your EIDL loan for payroll to pay yourself or pay others, and you can't use the PPP for the same thing. You gotta separate that. If you get just the EIDL loan for some reason in this process and not the PPP loan, the good news is, so the EIDL loans are not forgivable unless you refinance it into a PPP loan. And you can only refinance it into a PPP loan if you use the EIDL loan for your payroll. So just keep that straight. So again, if you feel like you need to pay yourself or pay others and the EIDL loan was the only thing you get, you need to make sure that you take really good records of the fact that you paid others, you paid yourself, so that you can refinance it into a PPP loan down the road. So that's another thing. A lot of people didn't know that. I want to just clear that up. Okay, so I can go to questions now. If you like, Miss Jasmine.
All right, so we're gonna go to questions. And so Audrey, if you don't mind, because I don't want to unmute everyone if I don't have to. We would like to do it by participant that has a question. There's a feature on here where you can raise your hand. Like I said, I'm still learning Zoom. I know the other day when me and Audrey were playing on here, she was able to do it. Do you remember how to do that, Audrey. I'm about to unmute you. So that way you can let everyone know, and then and that way people can raise their hands with their questions.
Okay, I do not see the hand wave, but the chat is down below. Darlene had to jump off, but she left a question in the chat.
Yeah, I see where Darlene left the question. And I see the chat. I know with the reactions. So for the time being, if you just go to the reactions, I guess, and just put the wave. So the reactions are at the bottom of the screen. But the same place where you will find the chat box.
Okay.
So when you go to the bottom of your video screen, you'll see a taskbar pop up. On that taskbar, you'll see mute, you'll see stop video, manage participants, chat, share screen, pause recording, and reactions. If you press on reactions, then you'll be able to do a thumbs up, or there might be a high five, I don't know, a hand clap. Press press the hand clap, and then that way Judith will know that you have a question, and then she can call you all off if you have any, or you're more than welcome to put them down here in the chat, whichever you prefer.
Yeah.
I think we'll start with the chat questions first.
Yeah, I know I saw Darlene's question about jumping off, but she wanted to know what is the timing of the EIDL loans? SBA is to, do we know what the status is, essentially? And the answer is a painful no. I can tell you potentially to wait 2 more weeks from now. Our hope is that that people in our community was able to tap the EIDL loan, but I would say wait 2 more weeks for that.
All right, and I think I saw some other, there's some other questions in there.
Okay, so it says I'm a sole proprietor, independent contractor. Do I qualify for the EIDL loan? Yes, everybody under the law, every business, every nonprofit under the law, with a few exceptions, qualify for EIDL and PPP loans. My question previously sent has been addressed. I need to jump off. Thank you. Okay. I'm just kind of reading as I go.
Jazz, do you see Jonathan's picture?
I do.
Okay, how do we take that off? Thank you.
Oh, so y'all see what I see. Oh, I'm sorry. For some reason, his picture pops up when the chat comes through.
Oh, okay. I was wondering about that. I was wondering about that.
And I didn't know everyone could see that. So thank you all. So like I said, I'm learning as I go. So if anyone was wondering why I was randomly hovering over that page, for some reason it just pops up.
Okay, so another question is PPP loans, sole proprietor receives 75% go to payroll. How can the funds within that 75% be spent? Again, the only on payroll and payroll compensation. And by definition, wages, it's the your gross wage, your gross salary, it's commission, it's tips, it's, I made a list here. It's vacations, it's family leave, it's dismissal for separation, it's insurance premiums, it's retirement benefits, and it's your state and local tax pay assessed on payroll, to name a few. The 25% is the rent, utilities, and interest on debt or mortgage.
So I guess, Judith, and this may or may not be her question or anyone else's, but after saying that, I guess my question is that, so if you're a sole proprietor and you're applying for this loan, how do I show to them that this is for my payroll? So let's say if I take a loan of, I'm just going to throw a number out there, 60,000. How do I show them that I paid this 60,000 towards my salary? Is there a way?
Okay. Yes. So if you are a sole proprietor or 1099, the best tax form to use is the 1040 or your Schedule C. So on your Schedule C, you make net earnings. And so that net earning is, times 2.5. I mean, that average per month times 2.5 is what you're eligible for.
Okay.
If you make, say, over $100,000 in that year, then you're only eligible to use up to $100,000. For example, if you make 105, 110, you have to subtract the 5 and the 10, and you're only able to qualify for the 100,000.
Okay. Did anyone need her to go over that math again so they can write it down?
Well, it should be on your forms, but again, so 1099s, those independent contractors, you can take your 1099s and you can add those up as well. You can take all the earnings you've made for the year, add them up, divide by 12 to come to some average per month, and then multiply that by 2.5.
Okay.
So that's how you would do that. So there is an assumption that from the sole proprietor 1099 point of view, that you did make some income. If you didn't make any income, then chances are you're probably not going to be getting any loan. And that's a good thing, because you can't, if you don't have any income, you can't pay for a loan. So you, even at 1%, regardless of whether it's 1% or 0.5%, it doesn't matter. You have to be able to repay the lender, or else you're going to be in worse trouble than you were 2 years ago. So again, that net earning is the key there, or the summation of your 1099 forms is the key there. Also, if you don't, so some people may not even have filed their taxes, and they didn't even file it for 2018. In that case, I would recommend that you go to irs.gov and go ahead and fill out the 1040 or the Schedule C. Because everybody, the government's giving everyone a chance. This is all self-certified, meaning it's you who comes to the lender and say, this is who I am, and this is, and because of who I am, I'm legit, and therefore I'm legit. Here are some forms to help you see me legitimately, and apart from the form, here's some documentation to back up the form. This is kind of how I want you all to approach this. So the onus is on you, and the lender is open, and he's open because he's just taking his existing clients, not too many new clients. So that's the best you can do. I can recommend you do if you don't, if you didn't file taxes for 2018.
Okay, and I see we have 2 other questions here, and as well as Simeon, I see in the chat she did address that. Simeon, yes, you may refinance that EIDL loan into the PPP at a later date. I remember hearing her say that. And
yes.
I think we are back at.
But Simeon, you got to make sure you keep good documentation for, so when you get that PPP or EIDL loan, this is what I recommend for everybody. I wouldn't mix it with your deposits or checking accounts or savings account. Don't mix it with those accounts. I would go to the lender and ask them to open up an account, entitle it PPP. If you get both, entitle one EIDL, and track receipts generated from EIDL and from your PPP account, so that you can clearly account for 75% spend on your income and others stuff like your rent and utilities. Does that make sense?
And I believe he also asked, is there a minimum amount that you can apply for under the EIDL option, and
so that's a good question.
Collateral not be required?
Yeah. What's interesting about the EIDL is that you don't decide how much you want through the EIDL SBA portal. There's some forms that you filled out while you're while you were on the portal. And those forms are busily assessing your ability to repay the loan. So it's probably checking for revenues, it's probably checking on liabilities, it's probably even verifying some things about your past tax returns. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to edit the new portal completely, but I know there were forms there. And so those forms are designed to figure out your ability to repay, because even though EIDL is 3.75 interest, it too doesn't require collateral and personal guarantee. Now, both institutions, both the SBA and lenders, will take your credit, or can, not sure will, but can take your credit score into account. So they will check that with the credit bureaus to also help them determine what is the right amount for you.
All right, and then we have a question here from Tammy that says, what if you are a new nonprofit that just started, and she gave her dates between 10/2019 or January of 2020. What information should you provide? And before you answer that, also, again, if you don't want to actually write it down here in the chat, or if you don't know exactly how to put it in words, but you know how to say it, just like I said, drop a reaction, and then I can definitely unmute you.
Okay, so that's a good question for nonprofits. So nonprofits, same thing as far as the process of filling out your PPP loan if you're going after the PPP or going through the portal. The documentation, so if you're filling out the PPP loan and you're a nonprofit, you're going to need your articles of incorporation. You're going to need the bylaws, your operating agreements, and it says here driver's license for primary application signer. So your primary application signer is usually the executive director. Sometimes it's the chairman of the nonprofit board. So those are the documentation required. If you're newly formed and you hadn't had the ability to even raise funds, newly formed could mean that, but it could also mean that you hadn't put together your board yet, or even decided on your chairman, or don't even have bylaws. So if you're really fresh in that way, then you're going to get frustrated with these processes, because they're looking for some evidence that you are mature enough to at least be able to do some repayment. And you might be better off just applying for unemployment. One of the things that I also kind of did numbers on is anyone, if you are a sole prop, or again, a 1099 person that kind of does things on the side, if you make less than $10,000 a year, you're probably better off going through the workforce, Texas workforce unemployment. Now I know they're busy, but I understand that if you were to do it late at night or early morning, you might get through. Another tip that I got was that if you were ever laid off in your past and you use Texas workforce website and you still have your password and your access, you can use those old password and access and get through faster than if you had to start a new one. So those are some tips that I've heard from that.
That's some great information. And I just have a quick, and then we have some more questions in here, but that reminds me of a question I got from someone else. They were saying that they wouldn't necessarily be, if you were I guess in that situation, and you would apply for federal unemployment, because you wouldn't be able to apply for state unemployment. Is that correct? And what's that amount?
I'm not sure about federal unemployment. I know the federal agent is working with state unemployment through the CARES Act to lift certain rules. For example, in the past, if you were a self-employed individual, you couldn't apply for unemployment. And so that rule has been lifted, and that goes for 1099s as well. Another rule is that in conjunction with some kind of base pay that they calculate, you get a $600 extra a week. And the rule, these extension in the Texas Workforce Overall Program extend through July 2020. So it's not going to be around for a long time, and it's only lifted, these rules are only lifted for this COVID-19 period. So I would, as best I can, take advantage of that if you can.
Okay, and so now we have a question here for Tommy that says, I received a notice from my bank concerning the PPP and the EIDL, where they were doing a side-by-side comparison, and it showed where the EIDL was forgiven. And I believe that I got an email as well, that it is forgivable.
Yes, the EIDL is forgivable provided you use it for payroll, but you got to prove that you did it for that. Just remember documentation. If you're not familiar with documentation, again, we're not all familiar with that. I'm an auditor, so I'm always about documentation. But sometimes we're not. Sometimes we think that by recording that we did it for this in our books, that's enough. But I'm talking about creating separate accounts for these actions so that it cleanly track your receipts that you spend out of that account. That's by far the best way to go. Don't blend any of this. Even if you have zero in your checking account, make zero in your checking account and create another account called the EIDL. Because yeah, you might accidentally put some money in your checking account.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and I just unmuted Linda. She kind of elaborated on her question.
Yeah.
And I unmuted her in case she wanted to, like I said, she wanted to verbally kind of, I guess, articulate what she's trying to say.
Thank you. I really appreciate this information. And I like what you said about opening a separate account so everything can be clean. But what I'm confused about, I applied for the PPL, and on the application, it sort of calculates how much you can ask for, you qualify, to ask for. But once you get that, because if it's for payroll, I'm a freelancer, an independent contractor. So payroll would be me.
Correct.
So if this is replacing my payroll for 2 months, what I need to know is is it legitimate to buy food with that money? Is it legitimate to pay my car payment? Because that is when I get paid, I'm paying car payment. And I understand the 25% about rent, but since I work from home, I think that's only a percentage that you can use of that 25% for rent, right? So,
yeah, so whatever you put on your Schedule C, absolutely. So whatever your overhead is what you use it for. So if your overhead, you can put those things as your costs for doing business. Lunch, your lunch can go in there, your dinner, whatever you put on your Schedule C.
Okay, because I see it as living expenses.
Yeah, but you would just term it as your business expenses.
Okay. Okay, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was it. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And does anyone else have any questions?
So I'm sorry. I was gonna also talk about things that you can do in the meantime while you wait for these PPP or EIDL loans. But I'll wait for more questions.
They may not have any in this moment, so I guess the floor is free to continue.
Oh, okay. So a lot of businesses, I know businesses, for example, that has 40 employees, 26 employees. I have these clients, they're still waiting, especially my restaurant clients. So in the meantime, there's some things that you can do to kind of hopefully, stay afloat. And so deferment is one of the things we talk about, at least I do. So right now is the time to talk to your landlord about deferral of rent. You know, I believe Dallas County is under an ordinance that for 90 days that no one can evict. So a landlord can't evict you. And once the ordinance passed, they can't assess fees on top of the rent that was lost. So I recommend that you talk to your landlord. If you have loans outstanding, for example, that you want to use the EIDL loan to pay for, you can go to your lender and ask for deferment again. And I wouldn't defer for like a year. I would defer like, you know, maybe 30 days at a time. Sometimes you can ask, if you're in good standing with your lender, you can ask for that deferment. Don't accrue any fees or any extra interest, so that when it's time to repay again, it's not some monstrous amount that, you know, that you defer. So you have that in your power, because everyone under the CARES Act in the United States, everyone is told to really work with each other to make it through this such a tough period. That includes the IRS, by the way. The IRS is saying that if you have a payroll for 2020, your payroll taxes, you can defer to pay those now until 2022, provided you pay half in 2021. So even the IRS is getting in on that. They might even waive certain things. But if you have some dispute with the IRS, you want to talk to them about what they can do in this time for you. You also want to check with insurance. So sometimes we have insurance and sometimes we don't. But if you do, check with any kind of policy under disruption of activity. That might help. Check in with your accountant or CPA for any kind of deductions you can do. Also, if you can, go ahead and do your tax, file your tax for 2019 now, so that you can get your tax rebate. So these are some things. There's also, you can talk to your suppliers. The suppliers also are part of the problem. Their businesses are getting disrupted. You can also call them, as long as you do it in advance, and tell them that, you know, can I pay you 30 days from now, or 60 days from now, or 90 days from now? But negotiate with them if you have that kind of business as well. We gotta pivot. We gotta figure out how we're gonna generate new revenues. So trying to bring in new revenue streams. I know a few of my restaurants, what now, they're doing advanced gift cards. So they're caterers, and right now there's no business, but they are staying in touch with their customers. They're keeping them warm. They're even getting in on seeing how much information they can share with their customers, since everybody's in the same boat about PPPs and EIDL, are, you know, doing informational seminars and Zooms, whatever it takes to keep you connected to your customers. Go ahead and creatively do that. If you wanted to even volunteer together, anything to keep your customers close, right? Let's see, some other ideas. Oh, one client of mine, she's in retail. So she had a clearance on a live Facebook. She went on Facebook Live and did a clearance, like commercial, clearance on clothing and so forth. So try to be creative. And again, if you're feeling down and not so creative, you can give us a call, give me a call, and we can brainstorm together. But this too will pass. I'm pretty sure. The United States doesn't like the fact that its economy is about to go in the tanks right now. And so everyone is trying, governors, they're trying to figure out how to phase in businesses slowly and still manage the COVID epidemic or pandemic. And because they understand that businesses have to get back to to doing business. So just stay hopeful. That's the best we can do. Stay hopeful, because that's what keeps the economy on track, being hopeful. If we become despair or discouraged, then that's kind of when we're going to be in trouble.
All right, and now I have a clarifying question. Someone just wanted to, like I said, just wanted to clarify that if you receive both loans, so both the EIDL and the PPP loan, do at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
should you deny one of them?
So good question. You can have both, but they have to have different purposes. So you can't use an EIDL loan, for example, to pay yourself or to pay payroll, and then turn around and use the PP loan to do the same thing. So you can receive both, you can sign for both, but you have to document that they were used for two separate purposes.
Okay.
Okay, so you can't, for example, PPP loan is also for rent, so you can't use the EIDL for rent. You got to use that for something else.
Okay. And then until it's time to refinance if you were using an EIDL for payroll purposes, then you can refinance it into the PPP, correct?
Well, if you're using the EIDL for payroll purposes, yes, you can roll it over into the PPP to get it forgiven. Yes, just make sure you document that though.
Okay.
Cleanly.
All right.
Here's another thing. I'm sorry. So part of the let's go back to PPP loans, retaining employees. So if you lose employees between the time you apply for your PPP, then when you go back and ask for forgiveness, then you're going to be deducted. That loan amount will be deducted or minus that employee that you lost. So keep that in mind. The whole intention of the law is to ensure that you keep people on your payroll. So if you lose people, then you're going to lose the loan or the amount forgiven by the amount of person you lost. However, if you rehire, say you lose them now and you get your PPP today and you're able to rehire them before June 30th, then you are eligible for forgiveness.
All right. We have someone that's asking, they said they receive a K-1 and not a 1099 from their business. How would a PPP work with a K-1 recipient?
Yeah, so those are, I think it still counts. It depends on how much you own. Are you the 100%? So you have to be more than 20% owner in that situation. If you do derive income from it, then yes, that would qualify for an EIDL or a PPP.
All right. And then we have someone that wants to schedule a phone consultation. I know you said you'll provide your email address, and then I guess you all can coordinate from there.
Yes, I can put my email. It's pretty simple. It's J Collins, COLLINS at D as in dog, C as in cat, C as in cat, C as in cat, D as in dog, .edu. So J Collins at dcccd.edu.
All right, and so then we have our next question here. They wanted to know, could you elaborate what the advancement grant can be used for? I think you may have already kind of touched on that.
Yeah, so the grant comes from EIDL portal. And by the way, it's not a grant. It's still a $10,000 advancement of the loan that you may or may not get. And it's confusing. It's only forgiven, again, the $10,000, it's only forgiven if you use it to maintain payroll.
Okay.
It's otherwise it's not a grant.
Okay, wonderful. And we have a question here. They said, though, as an independent contractor, I can set up a separate bank account, pay my normal monthly salary from the 75%, and pay other business-related costs out of the 25%. That is already documented on my Schedule C. They're just wanting to know, is that correct? Do they have a correct understanding of that? During the COVID-19 period. Let me try to add that.
Yeah, I think that 25% is for rent, utilities, and for any kind of interest or debt payments. I don't think you can use it for anything else, but maybe I'll check with SBA because and it's harder when it's you. It's whatever you document on that Schedule C, essentially. That's the 1040. That's going to count as your net income, and those are your expenses. So, you know, let me check with SB on that one, just to make sure that we're not committing fraud on that one.
And I kind of have I guess a clarifying question on that, kind of piggybacking on what you said a little earlier. So I wouldn't be able to, so if I were an independent contractor or even a sole proprietor, and I had, like you said, on whatever my Schedule C shows that I pretty much make for annually, like you said, I would divide that by 12 so that I could have like a monthly, I would know kind of like what my monthly income is, and then multiply that by 2 or 2.5.
2.5, yeah.
Multiply that by 2.5. I couldn't just write myself, once I received the loan, I couldn't just write myself write myself a check, like a payroll check.
Well, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can take it and divide it accordingly. Use it to pay accordingly, whatever your expenses are. Yeah.
Okay, so I would need to still, like you said, so I would still need to show what those expenses are out of that account. I couldn't just write me a check, like payroll, like here.
No, you just, yeah, no. Just be more precise. Yeah, if you're a sole proprietor, documentation is really key now. It's being more precise in how you spend it so that you won't be charged for fraud.
Okay. And Pam, you said, I see where you asked the question of, can you walk us through that EIDL process? If you don't mind, I'm gonna unmute you for a moment, unless you because I think that question may need a little bit more clarification, or do you kind of know where to go with that, Judith?
Might be need some more clarification because we know EIDL is through the SBA portal. So maybe you need to unmute her.
Okay.
Hi. So the question is, once you go to the SBA portal and you fill out the application, what's the process after that? After you submitted your application?
Oh, it's a waiting game. You should get a notice from the application portal with a number that says, that confirms that they have your application. So do you have like an application number or some kind of?
So you get the application number,
and
so once they deposit the advancement into your account, what is the process after that?
Well, what's interesting about EIDL is they could call you if they feel like they want to some clarifications. Someone could reach out to you just to clear up some things, for example, if they want to extend more money to you. But afterwards, it's just a waiting game. We're all waiting. So once if you wait, for example, if you get it, you need to deposit it, but I would recommend that you create your own account in your bank, label EIDL, to deposit the check. Okay, so on the application, when you filling it out, they're already asking for your bank information, correct? And so let's say that you got through the process of waiting and then they contact you. What is the process after that? Well, depending on what they contact you for, they could contact you for more collateral, for example, if they feel like they want to give you some more loan, or maybe over 125, maybe over over 25,000. But there's not much to it. They're not going to deposit it. I mean, unless you put direct deposit information on there, on that application. And if they do, then you would want to take the time to make sure that it's in its own account. That's it.
Okay. I was having a conversation with one of the representatives, SBA, and she was giving me the information that they would deposit the advancement into your account. And about 6 days later, someone would either call, like you said, or you'll receive an email. And so during that conversation, that's the process I was wanting to know if you could share with us.
Oh, there's not much there, but if you give them your direct deposit information and they deposit it into your account, just make sure you go to your lender and ask for it to have its own account.
Okay.
Yeah, just separate it from your current banking accounts.
Okay. So the process after you do that, the second process of you actually looking at whether to give you the loan, what does that look like?
Well, sometimes, like I said, they might call because they want to verify collateral. So these EIDL loans are different too, in that if you go above 25,000 or above 10,000, depending on your credit score, they might want to verify some things. That's all. When they call you and they want to talk to you, the purpose is to verify information. It's not to tell you, hey, go ahead and pay your bills now. It's more
so it's not to say this is what we are offering you. You have to sign documents. It's no going back and forth.
Oh, okay. Usually that's via email that you have to sign some kind of notice. It's kind of like a contract that you understand the purpose of the loan and what it's used for, and that you understand.
And if you don't mind, just to chime in, because we do have another question, so I want to get to the next question. So I hope that answered your question, Pam, but just in case, and this is for you or anyone else that may be receiving something, because this is a very new process to all of us, you may want to reach out to Judith separately. So that way we can just make sure that it's not, because there's a lot of fraud and scam that's going around. And I just really want, especially anyone that we come in contact with, we don't want any of them to be susceptible to that, because it could very well be someone that's not with the actual SBA that's reaching out to you, asking you for this information to get some of your personal information to do something else with it. So if there's any question or doubt or concern, I would say definitely reach out to an actual professional that can that has at least seen the paperwork to give you some type of comfort, or reach out to the actual organization themselves before sending anything back in.
Jasmine, huge point. That's a huge point.
To clarify, I was talking to someone at the SBA. It was the phone number that's on the application.
Okay, so you called.
So you answered, yes. Okay. So yes, you answered my question. Thank you, Miss Julie.
Pamela.
Yes.
Where are you? I see palm trees.
Good. How you doing?
Good. I see palm trees.
Yes. Oh, I'm on the beach.
Ooh.
On vacation.
She's taking a COVID-19 vacation. That's awesome.
Now, I have another question here, and they were saying, could you please, and I may actually have to unmute you, Rosie, so I hope you're not shy, because I think we may need some more information here, because they just asked, can you please share how to apply with a nonprofit organization? And I'm not certain as to when you say apply, are you referring to the EIDL loan or the PPP loan? And if she's already answered that question, then you can just, once I unmute you, you can just say skip or something.
Hi. Yes, I would like to know how far as moving with this. I didn't know which one that you would apply for. I did get on the call late. Apologize for that. But I am a nonprofit organization, and I was trying to find out what I need to do to move forward to see if I first qualify? That's my whole question. Would I qualify having a nonprofit organization?
So the answer to qualification is yes. All nonprofits are eligible to apply for both EIDL and PPP loans. Your first step into that arena is to, you can download a PPP application to see what that looks like, to kind of get acquainted with it, because I know for a fact that it's confusing to nonprofits because it's really targeting businesses, the form. And I can help you with the form if you have any questions. As for which one to apply for, I like the PPP loan because it's so accessible, but a lot of the time, you know, if you don't have much of an employee staff, you might kind of run into some challenges with documentation, which is what we're going to talk about, or what we've addressed and probably would talk about more offline. The EIDL loan, the challenge with the EIDL loan today is that it's almost out. It's running out, but you can go ahead and try. That's you know, until it's officially out. The EIDL loan doesn't feel readily accessible either. Like there is a 1-800 number you can call for SBA, and now that the PPP loan is out, you might be able to get through that 1-800 number because attention has switched from the SBA loan portal now to the PPPs. But there is a 1-800 number you can call just to check in to see the status of your application. It's been now 3 weeks, and they're anticipating another 3 weeks potentially to learn where everyone is with their EIDL loan.
If I could ask, can you please give me a direct contact? Because I would like to definitely speak with you offline to get.
Okay. Yeah, there's a 1-800 number. I can like, I don't have it with me now, but let's see, I can give it out for sure.
And the email that's in the portal, that's the direct email to you?
Yeah, the J Collins at DCCCD.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to also just kind of opine on what Jasmine said about scams. The minority communities are heavily targeted with scams right now, especially since there's a lot of misinformation about these loans being forgiven, and they're only forgiven based on some conditions. It's not an automatic grant per se. So my warning is this: if someone comes out of the blue to you about PPP loans or EIDL loans, if they come out of the blue, whether it's email, whether it's a phone call, you know, even in person, I wouldn't entertain them for 1 minute, or I would check in with the SBDC or SBA. It's just safer that way. There are people, for example, I had a client who emailed me and said, hey, this person is charging $10 to do my EIDL loan. Is that legitimate? And of course the answer is no, it's not legitimate. But to think, because they were so confused about the EIDL loan, they thought about it seriously because it's only $10. But I'm not sure if they had provided all their personal information, what would have happened next. So that's kind of how they come at you, these scams. So again, if they come to you, that's usually a red flag. You're better off just going to SBA. You're better off just calling an SBDC or SCORE, any of the partners that work with SBA to really find out more information.
All right. So we don't have any other questions in the chat. Does anyone have any other questions? I can unmute them. Like I said, just put a reaction or just say, hey, Jasmine, I got something to say. Just throw it in the chat there. If you do not know how to work the chat, I'm going to scroll through. And if you have your camera on and I see you waving your hand or something, I'll try to unmute you that way as well. Because I understand this technology is fairly new to a lot of us. So, like I said, if I see anyone waving their hand, I don't see it. All right, so I don't see any other questions. So aside from there, we do. So did you have anything else that you wanted to add, Ms. Collins?
No, just for everybody out there, I know it's frustrating staying in place, but I just want everybody to be safe and stay positive. And again, any questions you have, just let me know. But most importantly, just stay safe and stay positive.
All right, and before we let you all go, our executive director, Frances, she wants to chime in and she wants to say something. And I'm sure she'll say this, Judith, but thank you again. We really do appreciate it, as well as we appreciate everyone that has participated in this chat today. You all had some great questions, and we definitely hope that not only you all are using this information, but again, relaying it to other people as well, because it's a lot of people that don't know what's going on and that may be too bashful to ask. So just you don't have to call anyone out, but you can just volunteer the information, and typically they'll answer. So let me unmute Frances here. All right, Frances, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you, Jasmine. And I want to thank everyone for being on the call today. Judith, thank you for the wealth of information and knowledge that you provided to the group. Also, I would like to say we had 30 people who joined the call, and you to be applauded, because this information that we're trying to give you is very valuable. Jasmine, thank you for conducting and hosting the interview. We're excited. We're moving forward with several Lunch and Learn online opportunities. We've reached out to Senior Source to deal with the scams and misinformation. I'm going to host a Lunch and Learn on remote job opportunities. So make sure that you're on our email list and also pass the information to others. But we're excited. And again, Judith, we want to thank you from the Zam Wesley Holmes Jr. Community Outreach Center, Board of Directors and staff, for a great job on today, as well as you, Jasmine, for hosting today's Lunch and Learn. Thank you.
Thank you. And we are going to let you go. And just to piggyback on what Frances said real quick, if you registered for the event today, which all of you all have, that means that I have your email address. So there's no need in trying to confirm if you're on our email list. You are on there. So I'll make sure that you'll receive all correspondence moving forward, as well as I'm going to be sending out a survey probably within the next few days. If you could answer that survey for us. And again, it's going to be more so on information, different Lunch and Learns that you want us to see, different things that you all would like us to do or to improve upon. Like maybe you all absolutely hate the mute feature. So but like I said, you all have to make sure you communicate those things to me, so that way we can give you all the best experience. Aside from that, I am done. So thank you all again. Judith, anything else before I close this session out?
That's it. Bye, guys.
Everyone stay safe, social distance, and stay home. Bye.
Bye.